Hello guys, and welcome back to the channel. On today's tutorial, I'm going to be sharing with you how to sew this trendy gown with basque and a side gathers. So the style inspiration is by House of Naya from Instagram. So if you haven't yet subscribed, please hit on the subscribe button. Let's dive right into today's video. So here is my pattern, and I've gone ahead to mark out all my basic measurements, which includes my shoulder to bust, my shoulder to under bust, and my waistline. So next I'm going to mark my shoulder divided by 2, and I'll mark come down by 1 inch. Now I'm going to place my ruler and I'm going to connect it to the shoulder, to the neckline of the dress. So all this I'm doing is just serving as a guideline to draw out the neckline of our dress. So now I'm going to place and I'll mark the chest line. To get your chest line is your bust circumference divided by 6 plus 1.5 inches. And I'll go ahead to place my ruler and I'm going to draw a line at that point. So after I'm done drawing, I'm going to place this way and connect it back to the shoulder line. So this is what I have at this point. So there's no need dividing your armhole to get the armhole curve. So now from that chest line, I'm going to go ahead to go up by 2 or 1.5 inches. So the reason why I'm doing this is to make sure that the part going towards the armhole is not too low. So just like I said, I went ahead to mark 2 inches. If you want to use that, that is also okay. But I'll be using 1.5 inches and I'll go ahead to do a freehand sketch to connect to the neckline. So I'm going to go ahead, follow that freehand sketch and connect it back to the neckline of the dress this way. So this is why I said the neckline is serving as a guide for the upper part of the dress so that it will not be too choky. So what I have at that point, I'll just take it, extend it. I'm not actually using the chest line so that the dress will not drop so low at the armhole part of the dress. So now the next thing is to insert my measurement. So I'm going to place my tape. So I'm going to mark my bust circumference divided by 4, which leaves me at 8.3 inches at this point, and I will mark. So I'll be adding 1.5 inches to this, which is my sewing allowance. So before going down to the under bust, what I'm going to do is to go ahead to mark my dart intake. So if you notice on this particular dress, it doesn't have a dart intake on the body. So we're actually going to contour the under bust part, that is adding the dart, and then we'll blend it in. Like there's no dart sewing on the dress. So what I'm going to mark is my shoulder to bust line plus 1 inch and my nipple to nipple divided by 2, and I'll be marking that's 3.5, and I'll go ahead to mark ½ inch on both sides. So with that way, I'm going to rule out my dart intake. So after doing that, I'm going to go ahead to blend it out. So to blend out the dart, I'm just going to fold it up this way to cover up the dart intake. So after doing that, I'm going to go ahead to use a sellotape to hold it down. That way we've contoured our pattern. So I'll just go ahead to hold it. So even if you don't have a sellotape, you can just go ahead to pin it down or cut in between your dart lines and replace it back. So I've taped down the pattern, and the next thing is to impute our measurement. At the under bust, I'll be marking the under bust circumference divided by 4. My under bust circumference is 28 divided by 4. I have 7 inches, and I'll be adding 1.5 to it, making it 8.5, which is my sewing allowance also. So at the waistline, my under bust and my waistline is the same circumference. So even if yours is not the same, you're going to mark your waist circumference divided by 4. Mine is 28 divided by 4. I have 7 inches, and I'm going to go ahead to add 1.5 inches to it, making it 8.5 inches. So next, I'll be connecting from the bust down to the under bust, down to the waistline and take what I have at the bust up to the chest line and connect the line. So after connecting that, the next step is to go ahead to cut out my pattern. So if you have any question concerning this tutorial, please leave your question at the comment section. So at the neckline, I went down a bit, so just to avoid the neckline being too choky. So from there, I'm just going to go ahead to connect it down from the chest line to the underbust, and sorry, from the chest line to the bust to the underbust and down to the waistline. So this is my pattern for the front, and I'm going to go ahead to cut this out. So at this point, if you haven't yet subscribed to my YouTube channel, please hit on the subscribe button. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, and if you're a returning subscriber, thank you for always supporting my channel. So now to cut the back pattern, I'm going to go ahead to blend this in. That is the neckline of the front, and I'm going to blend it in starting from that chest line. So after that, I'm going to go ahead to place it on another pattern paper, and I'll be leaving space for the zipper allowance. So what I'm going to do after placing it, I'm going to go ahead to trace the sides. So after tracing the sides, we're going to work on the zipper side of the dress for the back pattern. So I'm just going to rule out where my zipper allowance is, just to indicate in case you're confused. And after doing that, the next thing I'm going to do is to go ahead to take out the bulginess at the back of the dress. So this is actually from the pattern paper that I've been using, so do not pay attention to the labeling at the lower part. So to do that, I'm just going to connect from the upper part down to the lower part this way, and I'm going to go ahead to cut it out. So after cutting it out, my back pattern is ready. So after this, the next part we'll be moving down to is the lower part of the skirt. But before that, this is the upper pattern of my dress. Now on the lower part, I'm going to be making use of this remaining pattern paper for this. Now we are going to take the upper part as the waistline. So normally you're going to insert your waist circumference to this. So my waist circumference divided by 4 is 7 inches, and adding 1.5 inches to it for my sewing allowance makes it 8.5 inches. So to get your hip point is 7 inches away from your hip line, but for a much taller person, you can go ahead to use 8. So for this particular pattern, the skirt did not touch the hip, it's a little above the hip, so I'll be using 5 inches for that point. So I'll go ahead to label my pattern so that it will not be too confusing, because we don't have much measurements for the skirt. So this is the waistline and this is the hip point. The hip point we're using, remember, is 5. This might vary from different people. So after this now, what you're going to do is to insert your hip measurements at this point. So the my hip circumference is 40 divided by 4, I have 10. So instead of marking that 10 exactly, I'll be using 9 inches. Reason why is because this pattern did not really touch the hip. So after that, I'll go ahead to add 1.5 inches to it, making it 10.5. So remember, I didn't use exactly my hip measurement. I took out 1 inch from it, so that by the time you're done shaping your skirt at this hip point, it won't be having air, or it will not relax on your dress. But if you do this, it will relax very well at the upper part of your hip. So now the next step is to get where you want the basque to start. So for me, I placed my tape at my waistline and I measured mine, where I wanted it to stop, and 9.5 was perfect for me. So this might vary from people. Just place your tape at your navel and measure where you want it to stop and go ahead to mark. So from that point, I'm going to connect it to the hip. So when I was actually cutting it out, my phone stopped recording. So but I'm going to be explaining to you what I actually did. So after doing that, I went ahead to connect from this basque point down to my hip line this way. So after doing that, the next step is just to go ahead to cut out your pattern, just to follow that line and cut it out. So after cutting it out, this is what I have. So the next thing you want to do after here is to work on the back pattern. And to cut out your back pattern, the only difference is that you're going to be adding your zipper allowance to the back. So join us in our next video where we'll be cutting and stitching up this dress pattern. And if you haven't yet subscribed, please hit on the subscribe